I would love to eat an ancestral diet, but I can't afford it. What can I do? I want to shop from small farms around me. How can I make this happen with a limited budget? Food costs are rising dramatically where I live, and the budget that once worked for us isn't cutting it anymore. Help! In a post industrial world where globally imported, subsidized factory food is perceived as the cheaper or only option for a budget, these are questions most of us have had at some point. In this episode, Allison and I want to make the case that not only are there ways to eat an ancestral diet and save money, but you can actually save money by eating an ancestral diet. This is the food of the people, the peasants, the commoners, the simple subsistence meals that most of our ancestors lived on. We aren't going to suggest things in this episode like eat out less or clip coupons. We know you already eat out far less than the average person, and you want to escape the grocery store system as much as possible. So, we want to bring you the very practical ways we negotiated with our wallets and our conscience, while still remaining inside the confines of a sometimes very limited budget. Allison is living in town in Italy, and I'm living in the United States on a small farm in one of the most expensive states of the Union, Washington State. Check the show notes to download part one of our list of 50 ways to save money in an ancestral kitchen so you can keep all of these ideas saved in one handy place. In our next episode, we will cover part two of the 50 ways, as well as give you the second PDF download to save in your kitchen notebook. Here's to saving money, living better, and eating wisely. Welcome to the Ancestral Kitchen Podcast with Allison, a European town dweller in central Italy, and Andrea, living on a newly created family farm in northwest Washington State, USA. Pull up a chair at the table and join us as we talk about eating, cooking, and living with ancient ancestral food wisdom in a modern world kitchen.
Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Allison. How are
I'm
you?
good, thank you today. How are you?
I am I am here. I am good. I am I am good. Nothing's bad. I'm just like,
You
whew,
made
I made
it.
it.
I'm
It
glad
felt
you
like a
did
marathon
because
to
this
get
is
to
a
this one.
big episode.
This is a big one.
We
This is
definitely
one we've
need,
been needing for a long
yeah, we
time.
definitely need to both be here because we are dedicating this episode to saving money, which is something we get asked about so much. Literally, patrons and non-patrons, listeners, people who follow us asked us to do this episode. And we've
Yeah.
got as much input from both of our lives, all of the people that we talk to, and we've specifically gone to the patrons and asked them. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
information. We've put it onto a download, which you can go and print out and keep with you. Do head over to the show notes and we will put the details of how you can get that download there. So don't feel like you have to have a pen and
Perfect.
paper ready when you're listening to us because we've got you covered. We've got it all nicely presented for you. Okay, so
Perfect.
before we dive into that big topic, have you eaten today yet, Andrea?
Kind of. I had oh, this is such a lame thing. I made corn muffins the other day
Yum.
and I didn't put any leavener in them just
Mm.
because yeah, I mixed the wet and then I all my dry containers are out. So I went out to the garage, got buckets, filled all my dry containers, and then put in the dry. And in the middle there, forgot to put in any leaven
Oh, it
whatsoever.
happens.
So they were kind of corn lumps. So they're corn muffins, but right, like not fluffy or
Mm.
anything. And yeah, I had butter and honey on them.
Oh.
So it was delicious and some raw cream and coffee. And if anybody ever wonders about saving money, it is eat the food that is not your favorite.
Yeah, exactly. If it
There
goes
you go. There's
wrong,
my tip.
eat it. We should add that
Eat it
one to the
even when
list,
it
shouldn't we?
flops.
Eat your disasters. Yeah, yeah.
And what did you eat, Allison?
Yeah, so we had lunch today. It's a holiday here in Italy, so Gabriel's with us. And we had some pork left over from slow cooking it earlier in the month and then freezing it afterwards, but not much. So um, I augmented it, that's the word I was looking for, with some bacon, which I chopped and fried, and then put in onions and mushrooms and some leftover broccoli from yesterday and cooked all that up. Then we had a few bits slices of the pork that was left from this week with bread, sourdough bread that's made with spent grains from the beer that we also drank at the meal, spread
Yum.
with lard and salt on the top and sauerkraut.
Is that the beer you had posted in your stories the other day
Yes.
with the oh, that looks so good.
Yeah.
I sent you a message on Instagram, but I really liked that bottle with the owls on it. That was super
Oh, we've
cute.
got some cute bottles. We've got smiley faces. We've got lavender.
Yeah.
We've got
I
owls.
had to look at it closer because I thought maybe Gabriel had put stickers or painted on it or
He does
something.
do that.
It was so
It
cute.
has been
I love it.
known. Yeah, so it was a nice lunch. Nice lunch.
Good.
Okay,
That sounds
you've got
lovely.
some reviews for us? Some people who are saying nice things
I've got
about
two
us.
reviews.
Do you want to share them
Oh
with the world?
gosh, yeah. Would we ever read it if someone said something bad?
Probably
Would you
not.
just be like, ignore
I'd
that one?
ignore that one. Because people do. I've seen cookbook writers talk about how, they've got that dreaded 1-star review on Amazon and how
Mhm.
just unfair and how it's awful for your morale and just,
Oh
but you
yeah.
have to get a thick skin and just ignore it and,
Yeah.
reignites your faith in what you're doing. So I think I
Cindy
just ignore a bad one.
Cindy Rollins is an author and she's talked about that too. She said she as an author, she is now very conscious when she writes
Mm.
reviews of living
Yeah.
authors.
Yeah.
And she says, a real person reads it. And she said,
Mm.
often the author does read those reviews, even if you don't get a response from them
Yeah.
on Goodreads and things like that. So she goes, even if I don't like it, I try to figure out how to fairly say that.
Wow.
So, but if you want us to read your review, make it 5 stars. Okay, Emily, ancestrally rooted, said, simple and down to earth. This podcast has quickly become one of my favorites. The hosts make ancestral foods simple and down to earth. They don't make me feel like I need a farm, a fancy kitchen, or a new linen apron to eat ancestrally. This podcast helps take the pressure off and simplify. I love the different perspectives too. A city versus farm, European versus American, bigger family versus smaller.
Mm. Thank you, Emily. That's lovely.
Um, between the two of
Oh,
them,
there's more.
you will probably see your own life somewhere in the discussion. I love that.
Wonderful.
Yeah. No, that's a good point though, Allison.
Mm.
You know, she's right that we've got these different sort
Mm.
of angles on the same goal,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is
And that's why I love
yeah,
doing what I do
good
with
point.
you because you bring so
Yeah.
much more that I could never bring, you know.
And so do
Mm.
you. And Rob pointed that out when he and I were talking the other
Mm.
day. He was like, you guys have different
Yeah.
just different
Yeah.
aspects. All right. M. Hopley? Hopley? Not sure if I said it right.
Mm-hmm.
5 stars. Timeless. This show is fantastic. And I'm usually listening in the car with my 1-year-old son who now recognizes your voices. Hello.
Hello.
Or cleaning my kitchen after a long day of cooking. Yep.
Know that one.
I like to think that if our female ancestors had radios, this is what they would be listening to while scrubbing their cast iron
Mm.
and rendering their tallow, and it makes me smile to think about whilst bringing me closer to them. Always look forward to an episode. Thank you.
That's
Aw,
lovely.
I love it.
The idea that people will look
Yeah.
forward to what episode we might put out next is fills my
Yeah.
heart with warmth.
It's very honoring and daunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
This better be good,
Yeah,
Allison.
exactly.
You better show up.
Exactly. Gosh. Okay.
But this is a good one.
Um,
This is a good one.
let's say hello to the new patrons. Have you got the list there? Because we've
Yeah,
got
we have a
quite a few
lot.
since the
Yeah.
last time we were together.
So new patrons, since we last recorded. So actually, the patrons, when they hear their name pop up here, we're recording this a little bit ahead of
Mm,
schedule since we've got some summer things. So they've been patrons for a
yeah.
while by the time you hear this. But Deidre Brown, Louisa from New Zealand, and she's been awesome on the Discord, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca Lerner, who is an annual member. She's a millet lover, and she's taking your Boza
Yeah.
course, Allison.
Yeah.
Amanda Brandt
Mm-hmm.
and Christian
Mm-hmm.
Zer, um, who is an annual member as well. So that's a nice little option where if you want to be a patron and support the podcast, you can actually, patron gives you a bit of a discount when you do an annual membership. Um, Allison, something that we put on the patron, but I don't think we've ever talked
Mm.
about on the podcast is that we have the mentorship level. Have we ever told anybody about that
No,
yet?
I don't
I
think
don't
so.
think
But
we
it's only
have.
been there like, a year and a half. We should talk about it.
We should. We're so good at this marketing thing. Uh, but the mentorship level is one that you dreamed up, Allison, because people were asking for this, which is somebody can be a member of the podcast, and at the mentorship level, then they get um, for every month that they're at that level, they would get a hour long one-on-one Zoom meeting with whichever one of us was going to be the one that answers their questions. So,
Mm,
like you heard in Emily's review, um, you know, we have some different perspectives on things, European versus
mm,
American, or, big families versus a smaller
mm,
family or whatever.
mm.
So you might already know which one of us might have the answers that you're looking for. So
Yeah.
you could do that, or you could, stay on the level for a couple months and flip flop between
Yeah,
us.
that's the thing. You're not kind of locked in with Patreon, and that's why we
Yeah.
liked it so much.
Yeah.
Because, if you thought, okay, well, a couple of hours talking to Alison or Andrea might really help me get over the hump of this problem. Maybe I think about my examples, I want to get my starter sorted or, something bread.
Mm,
But
yeah.
then you're not
Yeah.
tied in. So if you then say, okay, well, I want to
Yeah.
carry on supporting the podcast, but I don't need that one-on-one support anymore, then you can hop down to one of the levels that
Yeah.
still have tons of benefits. Have a forum which we're on regularly and lots of
Hmm.
extra documents and a exclusive podcast, but they're not as intense as the higher level. So yeah, we talked about the
Yeah.
mentorship level. Woohoo!
Yeah. I know. It's really cool. I want to see who does that, who I get to spend time
Yeah,
with.
yeah.
Or maybe everybody just wants to talk to you, Allison.
I don't
Honestly,
know.
I've got a lot of answers to a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm not so good with cows and things like that, farmsteads and running
Talk
a
to me
big.
about Boza.
Yeah, well, exactly.
If you've been around ancestral food for 10 minutes, you know liver is a superfood. You're looking at a food packed with vitamins A, K, a broad spectrum of B vitamins, CoQ10, bioavailable iron, plus many essential minerals and more. Liver is your first stop when seeking to gain energy and restore your health. Not only is it a delicacy and staple of traditional diets, it's the first thing most animal predators go for when hunting. Are you looking for a good way to work liver into your daily life, but getting it on the table just isn't happening yet or as much as you'd like? This is where liver capsules come in. Alison and I are both supplementing our ancestral diets with liver capsules from One Earth Health. We get all the incredible benefits of liver, even when we're on the road or preparing non-liver meals for our family, and the sourcing and preparation has all been handled for us. One Earth Health produces nutritious organ capsules from 100% grass-fed New Zealand-raised cattle. Support the pod by purchasing through our link, and you'll also get 5% off and free shipping as a bonus. Go to oneearthhealth.com/ancestralkitchen or check the show notes.
So let's get on and dive into our subject today because I feel
I'm
like
ready.
we have a lot of ground to cover. So this episode is
We do.
called 50 Ways to Save Money in an Ancestral Kitchen. And as we said earlier, lots of people ask us, I'm living a frugal life, I'm spending a lot of my money on food. Have you got any
Mhm.
tips that can help me save a bit more? Or I really want to do an ancestral diet, but I can't afford it. Because frankly, if you look around in a lot of social media spheres, ancestral diets do look expensive because there's jars of supplements everywhere, there's steaks,
Mm.
there's all these things that frankly
Steaks.
are expensive. But if you've listened to the
Yeah.
podcast, any of the episodes really, you'll know that's not really our jive. And so
Yeah.
we've come up with 50 ways that can help you save money. And I think before we dive into the list, which as I said, there's a PDF which you can download for, look in the show notes. We wanted to set expectations around the amount of money that one spends on food. And I looked at it from the UK perspective. And on the UK government website, I found some stats that said in the 1940s, and I kind of went back to the 1940s because I thought, that was before the big kind of push of, 1950s and packet things and supermarkets. And in the 1940s, rural households relied on gardens and allotments to provide more than 92% of their fruit and vegetables in winter and 98% in summer. And then there's another statistic which says a third of household income was spent on food in 1940 compared to 12% nowadays. And I just kind of ran the figures for that. And currencies aside, if your household income is 25,000, whether that's dollars or pounds or euros, in the 1940, that would have meant at a third of your income, you would have spent 8,300 a year on food, which is 694 a month. And if you compare those figures to the 12% now, that's 3,000 a year, 250 a month. So an absolutely humongous difference between 250 a month or 694 a month. And I feel like
Wait,
it's,
wait a minute.
yeah.
Can you,
Hmm.
people in 1940 were spending 694.
Well, I just gave an example because,
Okay.
say your household income, because you can say, oh, a third of money was spent on food then and 12% was spent now. And you're like, well, what does that
Okay.
mean? But if we look at an
Yeah.
income
Yeah.
of 25,000, the equivalent nowadays would be the difference between what we spend now, which would be 250 if your income was 25,000, to what they spent in 1940,
Gotcha.
694.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
say that's
Okay.
if that was dollars, $25,000, they were spending $694 a month in the 40s and
Wow.
$250 a month now. And, it's not much time since the 1940s, but that is almost 3 times as much spent per month on food in 1940 to now. And so when we ask the
Yeah.
question, well, how can I save money? How can I be frugal? How can I not spend so much on food? I think we have to look at have a larger vision and say, what's not enough? What is too much? And to understand that we're living in a time where people expect to pay a lot less than humanity
Hmm.
has for
Don't
virtually
get me
all
started,
of
Allison.
the history.
Yeah. Charlotte Smith made a great point when she actually talked about pricing your products. She said, today, for some reason, there is a culture around not only believing in, but then bragging about when something was really cheap. She said, people will drive really expensive
Mm,
cars, wear really expensive clothes, show off, I'm wearing a designer, whatever. And then they'll still say, look how cheap I got this case of steaks
yeah.
for. And she's like, why do we have this idea that cheap food is ideal? And I'll link to that episode of hers in the show
Mm,
notes because it is really good. She talks about kind of where that came from. But definitely understanding that our belief in the cheapness of food and how food should be cheap was born out of the Great Depression and government subsidies and a lot of things like that. um Not entirely. Yeah. So anyways, understanding that
mm,
makes it easier to grasp why people before and some of us today still believe in spending more, a higher percentage of our income than possibly other people do,
mm,
um, towards our food.
mm.
Why don't I share some
Yeah,
statistics that
please
Joel
do.
Salatin shared from the US
Yeah.
side that kind of feeds into that? Um, For one, which you touched on in Sir Patrick Holden's episode, he said that 40 to 50% of human edible food on the planet is thrown away. So remember, those subsidies are bringing down the cost of food that is being produced, and we're talking like wheat, soy, corn, not your, grass-fed beef. And then a lot of that food is just being discarded for various reasons because there's too
Mm.
much. So, yeah, that's a problem. 40 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
he said this in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So, 40 years ago, Americans spent 18% of their income on food and 8% of their income on healthcare. 40 years
Mm-hmm.
later, Americans
Mm.
spend 18% of their income on healthcare and 8% of
Gosh,
their income on food. It's a perfectly inverse relationship.
that's amazing.
Um, so I looked up the median household
Yeah,
income in the US in 2021, which was 70,784, which is going to be significantly higher and
yeah,
significantly lower than what some people are
yeah.
listening are earning. And that's just the median income. And 18% of that would be $12,741 a year. And I did the math real quick.
Mm.
If you bought a beef cow and 50 chickens and you were getting 3 gallons of raw milk a week at $12 a
Mm.
gallon, you'd have you'd have $536 a month left to
Gosh,
spend on, your grains and
yeah,
um, organic sugar and other things that might go into your diet. Um, which just based on what we buy, that would be, yeah, that would work. Like, it's just interesting, the allocation.
yeah.
Um,
It's astounding to
Joel,
see, to hear statistics like that.
I know. He also said
Mm.
this, which when you talked about perspective, I was thinking about this. So, um, first I'll preamble by saying that our ancestors, for most of human history, the majority of your day was spent
Yeah.
procuring enough calories to live. So now we create, and everybody's not using their energy to farm everything. And remember that up until the 1940s, over 99% of the world was a farmer in some
Mm.
aspect. And our ancestors used all their energy to produce food. Now we use our energy to produce money and we convert some of that into food by trading it with people who are converting, chlorophyll into food,
Mm.
basically. So if you think about the fact that once upon a time, all your resources were going into food,
Mm.
everything you made going into food, right? We're no longer at that point. Food is more, when we say food is more affordable, what we mean is it takes a smaller percentage of your income to feed
Yeah.
yourself. But it still, for longevity's sake, should take some significant portion, I feel. And Joel says, to support this statement, Joel says, um, I encourage people to take their recreation and entertainment budget of time and money and start to participate in the food system. Every single community is surrounded by integrity farmers. Many of them want to farm full time, and they need 10 or 20 more customers to tip them over so they don't have to commute to their town job
Mm.
to support their farm addiction.
Mm.
And remember, Allison, that post that I sent to you on Instagram where she was saying, if you spend 2 hours a day on your phone,
Mm.
which most people spend 2 or more hours a day on their phone, she totaled up how many hours that was in a month, etc. Um, she said you spend 60 hours a month on your phone if that's 2.5 full days. If you spend just 2 hours a day on your phone, so that's 60 hours a month. That's enough time, she says, to make 60 meals or read 13 books. Learn a new skill takes 20 hours, they
Mm.
say. So I imagine we could probably all manage a very small garden.
Yeah.
Um,
Or make our own
make this
bread.
2 hours a day. So yeah, yeah, let's go into our
Yeah.
list
Okay.
with
So
those things in mind.
I also want to just say before we dive into the list very quickly that the industrial food systems that have given us this cheap food are destroying our health, our planet, and our sanity. and our food shouldn't be this cheap. I feel like I want a t-shirt with that on. Okay, so let's list the 50 ways and stay with us till the end. At the end, we'll both give a kind of a personal take on what we think is our biggest way to save money. And we tried to divide the list into sections, and the first section is about sourcing food. Should I just dive in, Andrea?
Yeah, I'm also going to
Yeah.
say, Alison, that the list is really good and practical.
Okay.
Like, it's not just, yeah, we just told you that we're going to tell you to spend more money on food. But also, the list, yeah, money is also finite, so we have to find ways to make it last, right? Well, no, money's not really finite, I guess, but like what you have in your hand today is finite, and so
Yeah.
um, we want to help you make it go as far and
Yeah.
feed as much of your
As
family as you
possible.
can.
Completely.
And we're not going to tell you, I don't think anywhere on the list, Allison, does it say to stop eating out, right?
No.
Because that's dumb. We assume you already did
Yeah.
that.
Eat out. Yeah.
These-
What's that? Would you like more support to help you eat, cook, and live ancestrally? If so, come and check out our community at patreon.com/ancestral kitchen podcast. We've got so many goodies over there that will help guide, inspire, and support you in this journey we're taking together. There's our exclusive podcast where Andrea and I talk more intimately about what's happening in our kitchens and lives. There are so many after-show bonuses, downloads, extra audios and resources. We have a forum where you can ask and answer questions, and we even host a monthly chat where we get together and talk all the ancestral kitchen things. We love cooking and eating this way, and this community and library of resources is what we would have wanted when we started out. Check out www.patreon.com/ancestral kitchen podcast to get started. Okay,
let's
right.
go.
So the first one, number one, buy in bulk. And so many different things can be bought in bulk. I buy grain in bulk. That's the biggest thing that I buy in bulk. But, I know you can buy virtually anything in bulk. So I live in a tiny house, and the last time I bought spelt flour, I bought 25 kilograms of it. I'm trying to convert that into pounds, Andrea. It's like 50 pounds, I think, a bit more.
It's a lot.
And I have nowhere to put it, literally. I mean, we live in a 2-roomed apartment, and we have a lot of things, and I have a son, but we have sorghum behind the sofa. We have spelt in cupboards in the bedroom. And I've talked to so many people who listen to the podcast, and I know that they're going yes and nodding now. Because you can find space no matter how small your space is, and you can make humongous savings by buying in bulk. Like, I've sat down and I've gone through shops, and I've worked out, well, if I buy 5 kilos it's going to be this much. If I buy 10 kilos it's going to be this much. Look how much I'm saving when I buy 5 times that amount. So that's number one, buy in bulk. Number two, buy.
Remember those cute aesthetic pictures of garlic and hams hanging from the ceiling wasn't because people were trying to be cute. It was because they didn't have fancy paint pantries behind glass doors.
Exactly, yeah. Number two is buy locally. I really feel like the supermarket is a trap to make you spend more money. They've done their marketing, they know what they're doing, and even without that, the supermarket is often more expensive than a local farmer. So look around you to see what you can buy locally rather than automatically defaulting to the supermarket, because you will save money that way.
Just remember, your money at the supermarket is mostly going into overhead and marketing, whereas your money to the farmer goes 100% to the farm. Less than 5% of the money of your food dollars goes to farmers when you buy at the store. So,
number three, buy what's in season and work that into your meals rather than finding a recipe that you want to make and going out and trying to find what you need for that recipe. When we wrote Meals at the Ancestral Hearth, our cookbook, which came out earlier in the year, we tried to make it clear in that that's the way we cook. In my cast iron ground meat recipe, you use whatever's in season, whatever meat you've got, you're using whatever
Yeah.
greens or vegetables you've got, and you make it a different meal each time because you're doing what's in season.
Yeah.
And that means you're paying for something that is around rather than something that's been shipped from goodness knows where. So that will be cheaper.
That's episode 56 if somebody's wanting to
Thank you.
listen to that one.
Thank you. Number 4, look at prices of equivalents and choose the cheapest. So I was saying earlier on, that I've gone and I've checked when I'm bulk buying the price of everything. I've also done that, for example, with similar products. So I give the example of grain because I buy grain and I work with
That's a
grain.
good one.
Yeah. And there is a huge variation in price of grain. If you want an
Yeah.
alternative, inexpensive flour, choose rye. And I looked at prices of rye in Italy, where I am, and for the same amount of weight for 5 kilos, rye is €14 and einkorn is €30. And I thought, maybe that's just a UK thing. So I went on to Azure and I looked
Mm.
at their flour, and £10 of einkorn is $37, whereas £10 of rye is a tiny bit over $11.
Yep.
So that is nearly a quarter of
Yeah.
the price for rye to
Yeah.
einkorn. And rye is a
Yep.
grain that's lower in gluten than wheat. It's a grain that's not been treated like wheat in the past, 60, 70 years. It makes really good bread. And you can get, 4 loaves for the price of 1 loaf of einkorn. I mean, it's a no-brainer to me if you want to keep your costs down.
Yeah. And just calculate how many loaves you need to make in a year. This is how I do
Yeah.
it. There's 52 weeks in a year, and you're like, oh, my family eats, 5 loaves a week,
Mm,
let's say. So then calculate how much weight you need for each one. Then you can calculate, okay, do I want to do straight rye? Do I want to mix
yeah.
it? And then yeah, just figure out what the cheapest grains are. You can buy a year's worth of
Yeah.
grain at a time because it will store so well. Listen to the episode with
Yeah.
Ellie to know about that. But
Completely.
but it is a great way because you could basically, if you wanted to, you could make all your family's bread for, well, let's say a third of the cost,
Yeah.
right? Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good way to do it.
And do remember, if you got really excited about the prices that I said for rye there, I have a course on how to make sourdough rye, which you can get to via ancestralkitchen.com/rye. And that link will give you 10% off the course. So you'll be saving money there
Yeah,
too,
and you'll have that knowledge
forever.
forever.
Yeah, completely. Okay, number 5, get to know your farmer. So I wanted to give an example of when we lived in Cornwall in the UK here, that we got to know a farmer called Ian who sold at the local farmers market. And through befriending him, we ended up getting back fat completely free. So we were making lard and tallow from the back fat for nothing. We used to
Yeah,
get frozen things from him that he'd had, and he'd had too many of them. So we used to get literally bags of frozen liver for next to nothing. When he had too much of something, he would call us and ask us whether we wanted it. And we saved an astounding amount of money just because we nurtured that relationship with that farmer. And he knew that we would, what we would take and that we want these things. And he wanted to get rid of them. So get to know your farmer.
yep, I love it. And he's probably happy that you took it.
Yeah. Oh, he was, I think. Number 6, choose real food over supplements. And I kind of alluded earlier on, when you see ancestral food in the culture and in the media, you often see lots of supplements associated with it. Oh, you're lacking in this, you're lacking in that, you better buy this supplement, you better buy that supplement. And it's always been my kind of motto to try wherever possible to choose real food over a supplement. So I give an example of the buckwheat pancake recipe that is on my website under the resources tab. That I actually specifically developed because I wanted to get more B vitamins, and I looked up what supplements, natural supplements, what they were made of for B,
Mhm.
vitamin B, and they were made of sprouted buckwheat. So I sprouted some
Oh,
buckwheat, I blended it up, I soured it, and I made pancakes with it. And I can't tell you
perfect.
how much cheaper that was than actually going out and buying natural vitamin B supplements. So there's,
Well, even if the
mm,
in that instance, Allison is a good example, but let's say you wanted to get your B vitamins and zinc, right?
mm,
And so you ate heart.
yeah,
So even if the cost was the same, one of them gave you calories and
yeah,
some of your
yeah,
macros were covered, right? So you can't really make a meal out of a supplement
mm,
um, necessarily.
yeah,
I don't think,
yeah.
but you you covered the supplement need
And
and your dinner,
yeah, I didn't
shall we
even
say?
think about that bit.
So,
But yeah, I feel
yeah.
quite strongly
So it's a
about that
double.
because I mean, I know that a lot of supplement companies are very much in integrity and they are filling gaps where
Oh
that a
yeah,
lot of people,
yeah,
a lot of them who have a large disposable income and not the time necessarily to go and sprout buckwheat. But if we're families looking for ways to save money, that's definitely number six. Choosing real food is a
yeah.
way.
And if you do want to take supplements, this helps you to prioritize your
Yeah,
supplement
completely.
fund towards really high
Yeah.
quality good ones, like the one or what was it?
One Earth
One
Health.
Earth Health?
Yeah.
Yeah, Faisal's.
Yeah.
His supplements, I think, I don't know if there's ads on this episode or not, but his supplements are really awesome.
Mm,
So if you're like, I need to take a liver supplement or something,
mm.
say you didn't want to eat
Yep.
liver, you just couldn't. I need to take a liver supplement. Well, this would help you to be able to target that money towards a
Yeah.
really good
The
one.
one you
And
definitely
then,
can't or don't want to
yep,
include. Yeah,
yep,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, you can go to his site, which is oneearthhealth.com, and see his array of supplements there. And
He does free shipping for our
yeah,
listeners, right?
that's right.
I think we should
And
put the link in the
5%
show
off.
notes.
Yeah. Okay, number seven, start a buying group with local like minds. Buying in bulk, in serious bulk, with lots of other people is a tremendous way to save money. So that's about kind of reaching out and trying to actually even put it together yourself. Sometimes these things don't
Yeah,
appear and we have to do the work. When two and a
absolutely.
half years ago, when I really wanted to listen to an ancestral food podcast, at some point I had to get over myself and go, I've got to just do this. I've got to make it myself, haven't I? Sometimes you have to make
Yep.
a buying group. So don't feel like,
Don't,
just because there's one
yeah,
not in your area, there's probably someone else there who wants to do
yeah.
that.
Where do you think, how do you think the ones that are there
Yeah.
started? Because somebody started them.
Yeah.
They didn't just materialize out of thin air.
Yeah.
Somebody said, "Ah, I need to get this for my family, but it's 6 hours away.
Mm,
How can I make it worth the time?" You know?
yeah. Yeah. Number eight is
Right.
kind of along the same theme, which is trade, don't buy with those you know, and frankly, those you don't know. That just means going out
Hmm.
and finding people who have something that you want to get and would be happy to receive something that you can give them. Talk to people, find out where they buy from, find out what they do to save money. There's so much knowledge in community. And I feel like, Louisa, who is one of the patrons who we mentioned earlier, I asked her about this. We had a conversation and she said, the only thing I use Facebook for is the homesteading pages. And she goes on there and she asks for swaps. She says, I've got this. Has anyone got anything they want to trade with it? And so she's doing
Yeah,
that proactive
that's
thing. She's
brilliant.
going out and requesting them. Trading, not
Yeah.
buying, will save you so much.
I wanted to add on to that, Allison. It didn't know if it doesn't quite make its own line item,
Mm,
but work trades
mm,
can be
yeah,
phenomenal. From the farming perspective, I will say it can also be hard to pull off because it can take just as much time to train
yeah,
somebody. And a lot of people don't want to do the unglamorous jobs um, that need to be done on a farm. But if you are a hard worker and or if you have any skills that could be useful on a farm like carpentry or ditch digging,
mm,
I'm not even joking. Ditch digging is an actual skill and an art. Um, then connect with the farms you're connected with already. You're probably already a customer of a farm, right? So
mm,
offer them your skills and say, hey, listen, I'm willing to do this, or I'm willing to like sort your laundry for a couple hours if you can trade me some meat
yeah,
or whatever. Um, Shout out to Anna and Julia, who are listeners of the podcast, who reached out to me on Instagram, and they live within a 2-hour distance of us, I think. And they said, hey, would you be interested in having some help on the farm? They weren't even asking for a work trade, Allison,
Mm.
but basically they brought out their husbands and put their husbands to work. And just like we had a project for them that we figured would take them all day, and they finished it in an hour.
Wow. They want to come and do my
So we had to
washing
keep
up.
finding more projects for them. Yeah, we had to keep finding more projects for them. But let me tell you guys, I was like, let me send you home with some farm
Yeah,
food because
completely.
um it totally blew us away. And we told them, hey, if you guys want to come back, we'll give you basically whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so valuable.
um, so
So valuable.
yeah,
I think that's
offer
that's
that to
another number
farmers around you.
9 is talk to people. And I mean that's what they did there. Just everywhere
Yep.
you go.
Yeah.
And I'm an introvert and sometimes I find it hard, out in the real world, not over the Zoom call with you, Andrea, to is anyone listening to us? Oh no. Sometimes I find it hard to talk to people, but it pays dividends. If you can build a network for
Yeah.
this trading, whether it's skills or actual food skills, sharing the knowledge, just talk to everyone everywhere you go. And if they're not
Yeah.
interested, they're not
Yep.
interested. You're not going to look silly.
Yeah.
They're just going to move on to the next thing. But finding the gems that are out there who you can connect with and
Yeah.
create networks with, it's worth it completely.
Absolutely.
Like,
When I first heard Alison talking about boza, the fermented drink made of millet that's a household name in Turkey, I felt as if I was being transported back to a bazaar in the Ottoman Empire or traveling the Silk Road on the back of a camel, and I knew I wanted to taste it. Boza is fizzy, sweet, tart, and it's full of probiotics. You can drop it into your smoothies, spoon it on top of your breakfast, or drink it in the traditional way they still do in Istanbul, topped with cinnamon and toasted chickpeas. Fermented millet drinks were first made in that region of Europe in the 8th century BC, and as with all of Alison's courses, she's gone above and beyond in research and experimentation and testing on Rob and Gabe and given us an easy way to recreate the goodness in our own homes. If you'd like a fun and tasty way to get more probiotics into your life, bring her into your kitchen and have her walk you through how to bring this ancestral dairy-free, gluten-free fermentation recipe with her amazing Boza video course. Head to www.ancestralkitchen.com/boza, BOZA, to check out the video course. And happy fermentation!
okay, number 10. If you shop at physical stores, find out when they do their discounting and buy close to expiry date food from those stores. This was a tip from Janaya, who's a patron, and she says she gets so much stuff by just knowing when her local store discounts at the end of the week and
Yes,
going in
good
and
point.
buying the stuff there. And, not being fussy about whether it's the right thing for this right recipe, like we were talking about earlier, just buying that
Mhm.
stuff and using it. And she said that she got a huge batch of onions at one point, and then because she's got the skills to preserve them, she preserved like onions for a year for ridiculous, just a few dollars.
Amazing, amazing.
And that food's going to get thrown away otherwise. So if you are able to go
Yep.
and find out that and get to those stores, that's a really good tip.
And I'll throw in there, especially this feeds right into what she
Mm,
said. Um, don't just think about food because canning
yeah.
jars and lids are something that hardware stores consider a seasonal item.
Ah,
So if you listen to my interview with Angie, you know that
mm,
Angie and I can year round. We do things like dried beans that we can in the winter, for
mm,
instance, when we're not harvesting much. But for us, canning is a year-round
mm.
affair, but a lot of stores consider it seasonal, and they'll try to ditch the rest of their stock when it's
I
towards the end of the
see.
season, usually in September.
Okay.
So you can ask your stores, like ask the employees, when is your season for this? When are you trying to get rid of it? And then if you are willing, you can find a lot of stores will price match. So what
Mm,
I did when I first built my stock of
mm.
jars was I saw that one of the big hardware chains in the US, they discount their jars at the end of the season by 50%. So they were half off.
Gosh.
And then I printed off that sales page because the store itself was out. And then I went to um, a store that should not be named, but starts with a W and ends with a
Yeah,
Mart
I know that one.
in the US. And I went there because they'll price match what another store is offering on
Ah,
the exact
okay.
same product, like the same brand, and they don't take it out of season. So I brought it in there and they sold me a ton of jars at half off,
Wow.
right? So ask around and then watch for garage sales and things that have, you just have to look all the time. And I often ask as well, I'll say, do you have any canning jars you're selling?
Mm,
Because sometimes they won't even pull them out. They say, "Oh yeah, there is a box in the attic somewhere, or there's some back in the barn if you're willing to dig it out," you know. But look for your pressure canners and canning supplies and preserving supplies. Colleen picked me up a dehydrator for $20 the other day, and it's like a $180 dehydrator that she found at an estate
wow.
sale. So if you can find food preserving tools in the off season,
Mm,
everybody wants a dehydrator in
yeah.
summer. Everybody wants to buy a fan or an air conditioning unit in the summer, right? Nobody's thinking about that in December, but you're thinking
Yeah.
about it because nobody else is.
I
So yeah,
think
get stuff when it's off season.
it's kind of a parallel line to meal planning. It's kind of having a wide
Hmm.
attention at all times,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
therefore being
that's true.
thinking about, what am I going to need? What do I need? And how can I bring that to me in a cheaper way? I feel like number 11, which is kind of a similar thing. We're talking about online stores here. Um,
Yeah.
so if you're shopping there, keep up to date with their specials and sales and buy those things then.
Mm.
So if you know, for example, that your store
Yep.
sends out a newsletter and they have certain specials on, sign up for that newsletter, watch it, and watch when they discount certain things and how their marketing works. And if you see a special of something that you're going to be buying anyway, jump on it. But if you don't
Yeah.
keep an eye on those stores and you don't know what's happening, then those things are going to pass you by. Obviously, that takes time, but I think the savings that you can get from places like Azure are just astounding by just seeing what they're doing and when.
Yeah. Yeah, because they'll tell you when we're drowning in plums, then get plums,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
So
completely.
get a lot when it's
Okay, number
hot.
12. Um, this I thought when I decided on number 12, I thought about my mum's spice cupboard or the spice shelves in her cupboard, and she's got all like about, I don't know, 50 pots of spices that I don't know how long some of them have been in there at the back. And
Oh dear.
that's buying to a recipe rather than what you use more often, very, very often the
Right.
case. But
Right.
I think, there's spices are quite expensive and, luxury items are quite expensive. And if you concentrate on a few of those, you can buy those in bulk rather than having
Mhm.
to buy individual lots of little tiny pots of different spices, and then use those all separately and pay twice the price. So, if you really like
Yeah.
cinnamon, coriander, and ginger, then you don't buy all the other things that go around it. Buy those and buy a large bag of each of them and use them. And, when you finish them in 3 months' time, you can try another three and buy those in bulk, because
Yeah.
their spices can be really expensive.
My mom always did that just because we, had a big family. She would get like a few core spices and she gets them by the pound from
Mm,
Azure. And she would have other little odd things usually, but it wasn't like we always had it on hand. But we always knew she would have,
yeah,
cinnamon, for instance, because she'd buy it by the pound.
yeah, exactly. Who can live without cinnamon?
Yeah.
I'd say put that on the list, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally how? Don't even know.
Okay, what are we up to? Number 13.
13.
So, number 13, something that we've talked about a fair bit on the podcast. Don't think that you have to buy everything organic, 100% grass fed
Ugh.
and grass finished, because organic
She said
labeling
it.
is very difficult and very costly to get. And, if you read Diana Rogers, you'll hear
Expensive to
her talking
maintain every
about
year.
the difference between grass fed cows and the ones that are 100% grass finished. There are lists available online that most people know about, the Dirty Dozen list, where you can find the vegetables that are more affected and the fruit that are more affected by pesticides and fertilizers. But talk to your farmer again. They may not be organic, but they may not use any fertilizers and pesticides. They just can't afford
Yeah.
the
Yeah, there's a lot of
yeah,
those now. I would
exactly.
say here in the US anyways, more and more farmers are tending to not participate in the huge yearly expense of being able to put that label on their food. I mean, the cost gets trickled down to the consumer and it doesn't contribute
Yeah,
anything to the food. It doesn't even make you more
yeah,
accountable because the organic label allows
yeah,
so much to be done that you and I, Allison, would not
yeah.
agree with doing to a plant or an
Talk
animal.
to your farmer. So if
Yeah.
you're trying to decide meat wise, if you can't get organic, choose beef over pork and chicken, because we've seen the awful kind of things that
Yeah.
happen to pork and chicken because they can be kept in captivity and confinement in the way that you just can't do with beef. The the thing
Mhm.
here is to make your decisions conscious. We all know how much money we've got. We all know how many mouths we've got to feed, and it's about staying grounded and not feeling like because someone says you have to eat like this, like this, like this, everything organic, everything grass finished, then I've got to eat like that, and if I don't, it's just pointless. No, it's about looking at each decision that you make and making it consciously.
Yeah. And I will say because you can only make so many conscious decisions in a day, some other decisions might need to go off
I
autopilot.
know they got conscious decision overload. I can't cope.
Yeah. Which is Allison, when you look at our cookbook, it's why our food's so simple, I think,
Yeah,
because there's so many conscious decisions that have to go
yeah,
into that.
completely. Okay, number 14, meal plan. Full stop. So, meal planning, I feel like, is the complete ultimate way to buy seriously in bulk and systematize your entire kitchen. And the people who do this very well, which it doesn't include
Are not
me,
me. What?
yeah, um, literally sit down and divide their kitchen into maybe 6 week chunks or 2 month chunks, a month chunk, and say, right, this is what we're going to eat every week for the next 4 weeks. This on Monday, this on Tuesday, this on Wednesday, this on Thursday, and they're all going to feed into each other, and there's going to be leftovers. And therefore, to make these meals, I need to buy this, this, and this, and they can go and buy in bulk and do that. And then at the end of the 4 or 6 weeks, they can do another meal plan, maybe make it something different, so there's a bit of variety. That's not something that I
Yeah.
do
Or I mean,
because it's not my
you
thing.
roughly
I
meal plan though,
do, I
Allison, right?
do.
Because you're like, we eat spelt
Yeah,
loaves every
yeah.
week. So you kind of meal
Yeah,
planned that, we'll
I
say.
do.
And then you
I'm
bulk bought
I'm
50
I'm
pounds.
ingredient led, not not meal
Yeah.
led. So I have my ingredients that I buy. I buy them in bulk, and then I create dishes from them. And I'm confident that I can create dishes from them. I don't meal plan. For some people, that meal planning is a good thing because they don't feel that's not their forte to just wing it, and they need that meal planning. And sometimes if you are really so tight on a budget, or you have a big family, that's something that you need to bring out in order to really just literally count every single penny. And
Yeah.
mm,
Rebecca, website is
mm,
ahumbleplace.com. She's on Instagram at a humble
mm.
place. I feel like she does a good job about planning, and she actually shares videos of what she gets on Azure, so you can go
Ah,
watch those on her
that's
YouTube. And
interesting.
she talks about why she's a better planner than I am, and she's really good at planning her school stuff too. So go grab
Did you
all
say
her
she did that on
resources
YouTube?
for that. Yeah, she's got Azure halls, I think she calls them.
Okay. We'll link that. I'm
Yeah,
writing
so
a
she'll
little
post
note
them on her
here.
Instagram
We'll put that
as
in
well.
the show
Yeah,
notes so people can listen. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
and that I
Mhm.
think is Allison, that I meal plan post acquiring the food, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like we um just got a big chunk of a cow, therefore I'm planning with beef now, right? Like I
Yeah.
didn't plan with beef and then go hunt up a cow. Like for me, that's how
Yeah.
it goes. I land on some chunk of food and then that's what we eat. All right, number 15 is glean fields. Many farmers will allow you to glean fields after the harvest is done or between crop rotations. And this will require you building relationship with farmers or even being a full price customer for some time so they can learn to trust you or understand they see that you're always buying cases of things, they realize what you're doing, or knowing somebody who knows somebody, oh, my cousin owns a cherry orchard, my grandpa has strawberry fields. Those are some of the specific relationships that I have with people.
I had never
Um,
heard the word gleaning before you said that. So you
yeah.
have educated me. Thank
So,
you.
so in if anybody's read the book of Ruth in the Bible, then you remember Ruth was gleaning wheat
Ah,
after the harvest from oh my goodness, Boaz's fields. Wait, was Boaz her son or was now I'm getting it mixed up. Anyways, um, that is a biblical
I
mandate that was
see.
actually required in Deuteronomy. It says, leave the corners of your fields and whatever you drop, don't pick it back up when you're harvesting, so that then the people with less income
Hmm.
could come through afterwards and glean what they needed for their families.
Wow.
So there's a lot of people who, when you pick commercially, it costs you so much per hour, right? To have people
Mm,
picking. So after you've picked, say, the peak production, the plants may continue to produce, but it isn't enough to make it worth you paying someone to go out to the field. So a lot of that just falls to the ground and is discarded or is burned or whatever when plants are pulled out. So some farmers will allow people to go through and glean, and there may be a very small window of time, sometimes a matter of hours or sometimes a few days before they're going to clean out that field and start preparing for their next season.
mm,
So you do have to be ready to jump at the drop of a
mm,
hat. But if you know somebody, um, also I've had friends who went out and gleaned, and we just kind of threw a little bit their way to help pay for the time that they spent picking.
mm.
Maybe one family can go out and glean a ton of
I
cherries, and
see.
then everybody else can buy them at real low cost, just to, you don't want to go around and second sell all this stuff from a farmer's field, but this could be a way that families could
Yeah.
collaborate.
Okay.
So that's something to
Nice.
consider. There's also gleaners associations where um, sometimes bakeries and supermarkets and things like that will have leftovers of something that's
Mm,
perishable, and it will go into a certain area where a gleaners association has families that will come in and
mm,
just pick it up. So I remember friends growing up who would have 30 cases of cottage cheese or cream or something
mm.
that you just get what you get from the Gleaners Association. So you can look those up in your area.
Okay.
And that's usually more related to supermarket as a way to deal with the
Yeah.
overflow.
Okay. Nice.
Um, yeah, associated to that, I'd say number 16 is be ready for opportunity. So this means having some cash set aside, and also time could be the thing that you need.
Mm,
But this takes diligence and determination when you're on a budget, which I know you can do it for when somebody suddenly drops an amazing bargain on meat or grains or produce in your lap. So, having some freezer space or jars and lids on hand, or the time to jump in your car when someone says, guess what? We get to go glean cherries today for free. This is invaluable. And it is one of the ways that we kept our pantry stocked for a long time.
mm,
And we still do.
mm,
So find a strategy that you can use to chip away at building your savings, and don't scoff at the small beginnings.
mhm,
What I did for a long time when I first got married was when I went to the supermarket or literally anywhere I was spending money, I would get an extra $5 or $10 back in cash. And this didn't make a huge impact on the budget in the moment,
mm.
but it built up an envelope of cash. So then when somebody said, hey, do you want to buy this thing for $400 right now? It's like 75% off beef or something. I was like, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
And remember, with farmers, that cash talks. They like cash.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Cash is good.
Nice.
Number 17, also related to the opportunity, is buying animals whole or in halves or quarters. The price difference on that is pretty
Mhm.
significant. So, Allison, this is something that'd be hard for you to do, for instance, because your
Yeah.
freezer space is literally
Yeah.
limited. You could alternatively, if you had limited freezer space, and this is what I did for a while, just can it if you
Yeah.
don't have a
Yeah.
freezer. If you had, but you'd have to have your pressure canner and your jars on hand for that. But the difference in price when you're buying whole animals, just so people know if this is something that could conceivably come your way. it's even worth buying a freezer for. And I'll give an example. Right now in our area, ground meat, grass-fed ground meat, grass finished, I should say, is going for around $10 to $12 a
Mm,
pound. And if you usually if you buy like say 40 pounds, you can get as low as $7 a pound.
mm,
And then when you look at different cuts of meat, like steaks and
mm.
things that can be really
Yeah.
high, like $18 a pound, you know what I'm talking about. And then of course you can also buy tallow and soup bones and things like
Mm,
that. But if you can scrape together the money to buy an animal, where you can get right now a quarter of beef,
mm,
I know because I just bought
mhm.
some, is going for $3.75 a pound.
Gosh.
Plus you pay cut and wrap, which is usually like 90 cents a
Mhm.
pound. And that's for all the pieces. So your ground beef costs that per pound, your
Wow.
steaks cost that per pound, whatever you ask him to cut costs that per pound. And then you usually can ask for the bones and fat and they'll throw it in for
That's
free. The
incredible
butcher will just
difference.
chuck it all into a big bag. So when you think about that, you'd be getting, versus $12 a pound, you're getting it for basically $5 a pound
Mm,
or less. And then you're also getting your bones and fat for free. It really makes sense when you hear people say, get a freezer and put a half an animal in it.
yeah.
You have to have that upfront money because that's a big chunk of
Mm.
change that has to go out the door all at once. But if you can pull it off, it's definitely a
I
good way
think
around
the
here to
only way
save
I could
money,
do it was
especially.
if I went in with someone and we bought a small, like a quarter of an
Yeah,
animal,
which a lot of people do.
which again is about
Well, a lot of
talking
people
to
will do
people,
that.
isn't it? And building that network.
Yeah,
Mm,
the farmer will price it usually quarter and then a half and then a whole. Typically is slightly cheaper
mm,
the larger chunk you get. Not always, but sometimes. And that's because you're saving him marketing time. He doesn't have to go around and find other people to peddle the pieces
yeah.
to. Some um, butchers charge differently based on how much they're doing. And then also what your state and your regulations allow. In a lot of times, farmers aren't even allowed to sell a la carte pieces. So they might have to sell them in big chunks. So um, that all factors in. And there's a lot of people who will do, like you said, a few steps up. What was it? Um, Number 7, start a buying
Yeah.
group. There'll be like 5 families that will go in. Now, 5 families, each family could easily eat a lot more than that in a year, I'm sure, but they're able to buy it at that price because they all did it
Yeah.
together. So,
Together.
yeah.
Okay, so we're at the
Yeah.
end of the sourcing food section, and the next 6 points that we've got are all about ingredients, more specific. So I'm going to carry on with number 18, which is use
Okay.
pulses to stretch your meat further. So you can use pulses in lasagnas, in meatballs, in meatloaves, in just ground beef dishes, in anything that you're making with meat. Remember to soak and ferment them. And if you soak and ferment them and suddenly you can't make anything with them, well, you can freeze them after they've been soaked. That's fine. And then just add them
Yeah.
into your dishes, and the meat that you've got will feed more people, will go further. Number 19, which is one we both love, buy the stuff others don't want. That's the way to save a lot of money. So I'm talking pig
Yep.
trotters, I'm talking heads, hearts, lungs, spleen, liver, bones, the things that, with that farmer in Cornwall that I was talking about earlier, no one wanted trotters. No one wanted his bones. No one wanted his back fat from his cows. There's so much fat on a cow.
Unbelievable.
And you buy the stuff that
Yeah.
others don't want. Well, there's no market for it. So it can't be charged in the same way. And, you can literally live off the stuff others don't want. And you'd be
You could,
really nutrient full.
yeah, you could pay for all those things. And I will say that I've had friends who butchered and um, every single thing on this list, Allison, trotter's heads, heart, lungs,
Mm,
liver, bones, spleen, fat, I have gotten free.
mm.
Like all of these things I've basically been getting free. I will also pay for it. I always offer. I'm like, "I can pay," and they're like, "No, just take it so I don't have to compost it." Or take it to get it out of the freezer, like you said, that person was had the dents and dings or whatever. So just pay to get it out of the freezer. A lot of farmers that butcher will say, "I've got, hundreds of pounds of fat that I just need to get rid of," and they're happy for you to
Yeah.
take it. But it is also okay to pay for it.
Yeah, I
These
agree.
things have value. They took input. They take time to process. I tell you, it takes us a lot longer to process all the organs, feet, heads, and
Mm,
things off of our
mm,
birds than if we just gutted them and threw everything into one pile. So it does take time to clean all those
yeah.
things. So it's totally worth paying for,
So I think
but
I
often you
think I
can
do
get it for
half and
cheaper.
half. So whereas in England we had more stuff for free, here I pay Flavio for liver and heart. I think partially because the Italians aren't so squeamish about offal as the English are. But
Yeah,
he
yeah,
charges me basically nothing for bones and a very cheap price for fat. So it's kind of half and
yeah.
half
That's
here.
great.
Number 20.
Yeah, and I think that's very fair.
Yeah,
That's very
exactly.
fair.
I mean, like you said, there's a lot of work that's gone into creating that product for sale.
Yeah.
So it feels like a fair
Hmm.
exchange to me.
Hmm.
We kind of lead into number 20 with that, which is eat offal. Offal is the
Yeah,
most nutrient dense part of the animal for the smallest price. So you
makes no
literally
sense.
could eat half the amount of offal compared to something
Hmm.
else and get the same nutrients. Or you could eat double and you're paying less,
Yeah,
you get
yeah.
super nutrients and you're paying less for it. Offal cannot be overstated in a budget ancestral kitchen, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. And if you just need ways to make it tolerable to you, if you're like, I can't,
Mm,
again, just start with the heart or
yeah.
heads because that's the gosh, the meat on a head is so good and
Mm,
tender. And the heart is just a muscle. It's I don't even know why we call it an organ. It's just a
mm,
muscle. um, so start with those things and then use our cookbook
yeah.
or um I'll put Janelle's Instagram on here,
Okay.
Allison, because she has lots of really good ideas for eating off.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Beans and rice is number 21. I think we often forget about beans and rice. And obviously, for ancestral um, preparation, you're going to be soaking and then fermenting those beans of rice, which will break down anti nutrients in them and make everything more bioavailable. Sometimes
Mm.
I forget about my beans and I leave them soaking for a long time. If you change the water, they're more likely to last longer soaking. Remember to put an acidic medium in there, and if you can, keep the temperature up. And then take those beans and rice and cook them in stock. Stock we will get onto more later in the 50 ways. But if you cook them in
Perfect.
stock, you're going to be getting more protein from that stock, all those lovely amino acids and fat, and they will taste amazing because you fermented them. They will fill you up more than unfermented as well. So don't forget beans and rice. Number 22, we're back to
Perfect.
heart. So, like Andrea said, heart's a muscle. Heart has 20 to 30 grams of protein per 100 grams, which is like 4 ounces, depending on which source you go to. Some say 20, some say 30. And heart is a muscle. So if you're worried about offal, like we said, start with heart. And it's usually more reasonably priced, even though it is a muscle than other muscle cuts. And it's easy to cook. You can cook up a whole beef heart and it will last you for a long time. Do leftovers, so you're only actually cooking it once rather than cooking, 6 or 7 separate meals, and then you can focus on something else. My recipe
And
for,
if you
yeah,
know,
I
oh,
was just going to say,
keep
my
going.
recipe for slow cooked beef heart is in Meals at the Ancestral Hearth, which there is a link for in the show notes. So if you're intimidated by heart, go look at that recipe. Okay. Do you want to say anything about heart, Andrea? Or have I said enough?
Well, I just want to say that as for your
Mm,
recipe, I have been getting so many messages from people who are using the cookbook telling me how completely blown away they are by how good the recipe is
Hmm?
and how simple it was. And Anita, who we interviewed on the
Yeah.
podcast in the
Yeah.
spring, she um messaged me and she said she said she couldn't believe how good it was, and that she and her husband are going to try and get their hands on more heart now because they loved it so much.
Wonderful.
So she said it might be their new favorite way to have beef.
Yay. Okay, number
Yeah.
23. Get good with a whole chicken. I have seen so many people cook chicken and then literally leave meat on it that would feed the three of us here for 2 meals. When I have
Yeah.
cooked a chicken, I let it cool down and then I go at it like a scavenger. I mean, literally turn it over.
Yeah.
There are bits that you can slide
Yeah.
off with your thumb, open it up, look inside, just get every
Yep.
bit of meat off it you can, and you will automatically be giving yourself kind of more protein rather than putting that chicken in the bin, which is not quite what a lot of people do.
Yeah, you can even do what my friend Beryl does. She cracks open the bones and sucks out
Ah,
the marrow,
yum.
and she works her chicken till there's nothing left. And I think we talked about on the whole chicken episode, which we should link in here,
Yeah.
Allison, that Joel said that his quality pastured chicken prices per pound were the same as the Walmart um, boneless, skinless
Gosh.
breast
Yeah,
meat.
I remember
So
now.
I actually went to
Oh,
the
yeah.
store the other
Yeah.
day. Gary took me to the store and I just basically was running around the store with my phone taking pictures of things. And
Look at
I
this.
was
Oh
like,
my
look, Gary,
gosh.
there. Yeah, the whole chicken at the grocery store, which knowing what I know about the way it was produced, I wouldn't buy that chicken, to be honest, was really
Mm,
cheap. But then the prepared pieces, they did actually cost more than our pastured chicken per
gosh.
pound. I was really surprised. So you can get some pretty high quality, soy free, pastured, daily fresh grass chicken per pound for the same as you would um, that kind of gross processed
Mm,
packaged styrofoam
mm.
meat, right? And like you said, Allison, by the time we've finished with a chicken carcass and then we've cooked those bones in broth and everything, and then I've crushed them in
Yeah.
broth and cooked them again, there's not much
Yeah.
left. So
Exactly.
we really get our
It
money
just
out of it.
disappears. There's literally nothing left.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So we
Awesome.
have gone over the hour quite substantially, and we still have 27 ways to
It's so
save
much
money in
goodness.
an ancestral kitchen to go. So I think what we're going to do is um, make this a double episode
I
and
love it. I love
come
it.
back at you next time with the next episode with numbers 24 through to 50. So we've got a section on
Perfect.
stock, we've got a section on kitchen routine and cooking. That's a really big section. And then we've got a section on home tasks. And then we've got a large section of things that are great tips that didn't fit in with the others. And of course,
Yeah.
we're going to share as well our favourite ways of saving money. You know, the things that we really feel most passionate about. So I think what we should,
So on the
yeah,
next so on the next episode, should we say at the very end, Allison, if you could do one
yeah,
thing, what is
yeah,
it? Okay,
exactly.
we'll do that on
Yeah.
the
So
next episode.
think
Oh,
about
good.
your answer to that because that's what I'm going to ask
Okay.
you.
I think I know what I'm going to say
Okay.
already.
Okay. So I would just say maybe arrivederci because I will see you again to continue with the list on the next episode, Andrea. Thank you.
Perfect. All
Thank
right,
you.
Allison.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. We'd love to continue the conversation. Come find us on Instagram. Andrea's at Farm and Hearth and Allison's at Ancestral_kitchen. Until next time, we both wish you much fun, exploration, and satisfaction in and out of the kitchen.